It is time once again for the weekly prep show. It's the preparation time for your fantasy football team. And again, this is the Vampire Fantasy Football Forum. It's week 10 in the NFL. We are over halfway point both in the NFL and in fantasy, well over it in fantasy. So let's take a look at the schedules. Now, prior to taking a look at the schedules, quick note. Like and subscribe our YouTube channel. Follow us or find our podcast on Spotify. Go get notified when we upload videos like this one or when we go live, as we go live every once in a while. And we have special guests on there talking about what's happened and different topics, both real and fantasy football related. Now, every fantasy football manager is an analyst, in a manner of speaking. We all see what goes on each game, each week, with our own eyes, with what we watch, and we all see the outcomes of those games or of players, and we see if it was a desired outcome that we thought or hoped would happen, or if that outcome missed. And we have to look beyond the outcome and understand the process of why we played the players we did. Was it bad process that we need to learn from? Or was it good process that a player just didn't hit, didn't have the desired outcome? Because we all know football's random. The ball's not perfectly round. And so therefore, a bad bounce, it's unlucky. We don't get the outcome we thought was going to happen. But it was still good process to go play those players. We have to remember that. Good fantasy football managers understand there is an element of luck that does come into play with each week. Luck can be scoring less than the league average for your league, but you still win in that week due to your opponent just scoring less than you. On the opposite side, it could be bad luck. You could score higher than the league average for your league, and yet you played the top scorer in your league, and so you still lost. Does that mean you had bad process in that week where you lost, but you scored higher than the average? No, of course not. Depending on your record, you may be close to a 500 record. You also may be a top scoring team in your league. So this doesn't mean your process has been bad. It's been unlucky with the schedule. So don't go out and just abandon the process of why we continue to play certain players, why process has been good, and yet luck for schedule-wise in this way has not been on our side. We have to be careful with how we use the term luck, because a bad fantasy football manager will just say, well, I got unlucky this year. You could get unlucky with the injury bug. You could have had Dak Prescott, and he got hurt. But there's still a process to be said to why you go and pick up certain players and play them. You could have Justin Fields right now had you had Dak Prescott. Yes, Justin Fields at the time that Dak Prescott got injured was not doing so well. But if we are paying attention to the right details, this is what makes for good process. You pay attention to the right details, you are able to see players start to hit before they actually go off and before everybody else is on them of, oh, I should go pick up and play this guy. You need to be early. Sometimes a week, 2 weeks early. But again, this is not to abandon the process. We don't abandon the process because of luck. We don't abandon why we play certain players, why we don't play certain players based on just the numbers, the outcome that's shown us. We have to go beyond that. What we see on the field when we watch and what the numbers show us, does that match up? If it does, then we know it's good process. If it doesn't, that's where we know there's a discrepancy. That's what happens. That's what happens when players falter. That's what happens when we don't get a desired outcome, is the numbers or what's on film don't match up. I'll give an example of this it's maybe a bad example, but for those that own or those that roster Joe Mixon, is it bad process to have drafted Joe Mixon? Well, up until last week, if you're Joe Mixon, if you have Joe Mixon on your roster, you were not feeling really good about life right now, having Joe Mixon rostered. It's not been a good ride this year. It's not a great feeling. You kind of have to be nauseated as you click the start button that, oh, I'm going to play him this week. I'm going to play him. But that's all been the whole Bengals team this year, though. It's not been good. It's been kind of up and down, and it's better as of late. But it's not been a smooth ride. It's not been just, yep, I'm good. We're good. There are other players that I could use, for example, but Mixon's really a good one right now. But last week happened, didn't it? Last week, Mixon had regression in a positive way for almost the entire season so far, where he had just this big booming week where if you had him, most likely you won. And if you didn't, it doesn't mean it was bad process. So if you look overall now, because typically what analysis will say is, well, overall for the season, Mixon is averaging this. Well, maybe. I mean, yes, technically. But if you roster him, you know that hasn't felt like that. One game elevates his standing for the season. And all of a sudden now, his per game average looks really good. But if you roster him, you know that hasn't felt that way. This is where we have to be careful. Oh, season long, this has been this way. Per game, this is what he's averaging. Okay? Go back and look per game. Is that really what he averages? No. There might be opportunity to trade away when cases like that come up. There also may be opportunity, if you understand how fantasy points, the opportunities are missed, to go acquire players that may be lower on a consensus of what your league thinks of them, but you're higher on because you see there is potential. There's been points that have been missed. There's potential here for me to go get value from a player. Don't get me wrong. I think Joe Mixon's a fine fantasy football or fine NFL player for that matter, but he's been fine, but it's been rough. So just remember, not all averages of points are created equally. We have to take that with a grain of salt. Well, we can't just say, well, for the year, this is what they're averaging. So therefore, this is what it should be. Yeah, maybe, but maybe not. So don't fall into that trap of just saying, well, the averages. And this comes into play a lot more. I mean, it helps understanding this season-wide. But next year, and I know we're not even through this year yet. We're over halfway through, but not through this year yet. But next year, when draft season comes, don't forget, not all season averages are created equally. Don't just go off of, well, the season average was this, so therefore, this is going to happen. Nope. Now, I'm going to give my weekly, I think it's turned a weekly reminder as we prepare for this week's games and what we like or don't like potentially. It is not possible for myself or for you to predict the game outcomes this year or this week. So don't try. You can take a fringe player and say, well, based on what I think the game's going to be, this is what's going to happen. Again, is that good process or bad process? It depends on how you're defining what you think will happen. Remember, think of a bell curve. There is a 5% of a low end that could happen in a game. There's also, on the other side, of 5% of what could happen on the other side of being really good for fantasy football and for real football. There's then also those 20% on each side, and then the middle, that 50%. Most likely the things that are going to happen in there. We don't know. It could be an outlier game. But you have the process of why you're playing players based on both the numbers and what we're seeing. It's a good process. I'm going to hit on this a little bit later, and I'm hopefully going to be able to make this clear as I talk about this. So, first game up that we're going to talk about is in Germany, actually. First game in Germany, I believe, and that's against the Seahawks and the Bucks. And this game shows the Bucks as a 2.5-point favorite. Now, this game total is at 44.5. Now, if you look at game totals, I'm going to hit on this a little bit harder too, but I'm going to say it now. Scoring across the league is down. So game totals are going to come down. We have to remember that. Which also that means fantasy football points that are scored comes down. It all correlates. If football scoring is down, production is also down. When production is down, points for fantasy football, because we play a game within a game, that goes down too. So, the past few years, we've seen these high potential, high scoring offenses and high scoring players becomes fewer and fewer. And even the top end guys, that ceiling is a little bit limited because scoring as a whole comes down. Makes your margin for error a little bit less. So you have to be careful with that. Now, on Seattle's side, once again, this team has shown all the doubters that they are not, or that they are able to be relevant. And that means probably more in a football sense than in fantasy. But if you're looking at guys for Seattle, I'm not scared of this matchup. Tampa Bay has a good rush defense, so you may lower your expectations for Kenneth Walker. But if he's getting his work share that he typically gets, which he is, and Pete Carroll has shown that he's going to, he is the guy there. He's the guy getting the workload. You still play it. Remember, talent plus opportunity equals fantasy production. Kenneth Walker has the talent. We've already known that. And now he has the opportunity. And he's holding that opportunity. So that means consistently he will get the fantasy football or the fantasy production that we desire. Now, against tougher matchups, yes, there is that option that, well, it may be a little bit less. But, again, we don't think that we know what game script's going to be. You can start Geno Smith. I think he's a fine start. He's about the same level as Tom Brady, in my opinion. He's especially startable in 2 QB leagues. But Seattle's pretty easy. You don't need me to tell you who to start or not. We're looking on the margins. You're starting Lockett. You're starting Metcalf if they're healthy. I would stay away if Lockett and Metcalf are healthy. This is not an offense where a third wide receiver is viable when those two are healthy. Now, you can stream on the tight end position. It could be Noah Fant. He has been having that production creep up. We saw it last week. He had one big play that helps his totals. But don't be shocked if Will Dissly comes out and just takes everything away from him. So, you can stream one of the tight ends. It's probably Fant. But don't be afraid when Dissly comes out of nowhere and takes that production away for one game. Because this is football. We don't tend to know what's going to happen. We try to, but we can't. On the Bucs side, Seattle has been pretty friendly as far as the defense for fantasy football. They will give up their points and opportunities to opponents. So there has been a lot in the news for Tampa Bay this week. There are a lot of questions of what this team will look like. Is Brady going to be able to keep turning this around? Is he able to? Is this a good spot for that to happen? I wouldn't be surprised if he does look a little bit better this game. Godwin and Edwards are both questionable this week. Monitor them, but if they play, you're starting them. Especially if they don't, Julio Jones, I think, has been more on track to be more healthy this year or this week. So he could be a guy, especially if Godwin or Evans misses, then he would be a guy that you could start. Against Seattle, similar to Arizona, you can start tight ends against them. K. Dotton, the tight end fabric of our lives, Mr. K. Dotton, he got you there last week with that late touchdown. You can go out and stream him again. The big question for Tampa Bay, do you believe what you've been hearing from the beat reporters? Is this the time that Leonard Fournette just needs now to take things over again? Or is this going to be Rachaad White's backfield? White is taking more of that backfield. He did get over 40% last week of a snap share. But this is not something that's happening just 1 week. Now we're here. This has been slowly working itself up. Now, this doesn't mean that Leonard Fournette is done. This doesn't mean he's just, well, now it's going to be Rachaad White. We have to be careful with the noise that the beat reporters give us. This is a lot of noise we have to filter through. It is their job to report things, to give stories, what they hear. That is their job. It's our job to understand, is this just something that's being written? Is this actionable? What is this? I'm still, if I have Leonard Fournette, you probably don't have another option. Hopefully you have Rachaad White at this point in time. This is the time in the year to have handcuffs. So hopefully you have Rachaad White too. Don't jump out to best case scenario. Rachaad White is younger. He's probably a little bit more quick. He probably has a little more speed and power. But doesn't mean Fournette's going to just go away. On the season, this is a 60% to 30% snap share over the course of the season. That's been trending up for White and down for Fournette. But just remember, through the season, this is still a 2/3, 1/3. Okay? Don't just jump out to, well, what's going to happen? All right, let's move to the next game. Vikings and the Bills. And the Bills are a 3.5-point favorite in this game, with the game total at 43.5. On the Vikings side, this season, the Vikings have either won in a one-score game and or in a game played against a backup quarterback. 5 of their 8 games that have been played this season have been this way, either against a backup quarterback and or has been a one-score game. Just remember that. I think that comes into play later in the season, but it's good to know. I think the game total, Vegas sees this as Allen may not particularly play. Or if he does, he is limited with that elbow injury. So just remember that. If you think that, if you're a Vikings fan, you really do hope that Allen may not play because your record is better than the Bills. You'd like to keep pace with Philadelphia. You're 1 game behind. That 1 game was against Philadelphia, though, so you're technically about 2 games behind because you need that tiebreaker for NFC for playoffs. Now, on paper, the Vikings, if you look at the numbers, rank near both in offense and defense as far as efficiency. Now, this is NFL-wise. This is real football talk for a sec. They rank on paper about the same place that the Packers do. Offensively, mostly. Packers are actually better defensively. But we wouldn't think that, would we? Nope. Vikings are a lot better than the Packers, aren't they? They have a lot more weapons. Efficiency does matter. But when you win, people don't necessarily think that you're as bad as you might be. I'm not saying the Vikings are bad. Don't come out here with all this Minnesota hate saying the Vikings are bad. But it's just interesting to think that if the Vikings on paper are about the same offensively as the Packers, we think the Packers are a dumpster fire. Now, as the season goes on, this could probably correct itself, and this probably will, and that's fine. But, again, remember, perception changes as the records do. Packers have a bad record. Their perception is bad. Vikings have a good record. Their perception is good. On the Viking side, it is pretty clear. Yes, you can start Kirk Cousins, but understand if you have somebody like Fields, I'll go back to Fields, he's a better start. Cousins is worth sitting then. You may even say, well, I'm going to start Garoppolo. But if you've started Cousins this whole time, don't go away from it. Process. Remember that. Process. Cousins has faced tough defenses before. Green Bay ranks near Buffalo against quarterbacks for fantasy football. Cousins did really well against Green Bay. So just don't forget that. You're still starting Jefferson, and you're going to start Hawkinson, and you're starting Dalvin Cook. That's a no-brainer. Where I would say, yes, you can still start, but again, it might be limited. Adam Thielen. You're still starting him. He's probably in your lineup. That's not a bad play, especially if Tre'Davious White comes back for Buffalo and starts shadowing Justin Jefferson. That opens up the field to Thielen, Hawkinson, maybe KJ Osborne. We'll see, though. We don't expect to know game script, though. So, on the Bills side, if Allen plays, that, of course, raises the level. It elevates all offensive positions. It elevates Diggs. It elevates Davis. It elevates Knox, McKenzie, all of them. Without Allen playing, it kind of lowers them all. You're still starting Diggs. It's a law of conservation of targets, and that's not my term, that's somebody else's. But targets have to funnel, and they start with the first read. That's the best wide receiver. That would be Diggs. You can still play Gabe Davis if Allen doesn't play, in his case, Keenum. But just remember, with a backup, and the Vikings are a decent defense, you lower the expectation. This is probably more of a bust, like 3 for 30, not 3 for 90 and a touchdown game for Gabe Davis, if that's the case. You can still play Singletary. I'm still interested in playing Hines. And I think, remember, Hines was brought in. He has ran this year. Now, this is with Indy, but he has the potential to still do this in Buffalo. He can run. He has run about 20% of his snaps from the slot. So he can be used as a slot receiver. That's, I think, part of the reason why Buffalo brought him in, to be that guy out of the backfield to catch passes. Wow. So I would say the sneaky start here is still Hines. I know he laid a dud last week, but I still think his output for this game can be good. Next game is a fun one, Lions and Bears. And this is set at 48.5 for a game total, with the Bears as a 2.5 point favorite. And remember, we've said this before, but I'm going to remind us again, this is a divisional game. Divisional games mean pandemonium ensues. On the Lions side of the ball, this is a great spot on paper. You can start Goff. You can start Amon-Ra St. Brown. You can start Swift. You can start Jamal Williams. If you want to take a flyer, the player on the margin is Khalif Raymond. This is the spot to start him. The Bears are really bad. The Bears are worse against the run than the pass, but the run will open up the pass. You don't need me to tell you a whole lot. If you have Lions, this is the week to start them. Don't be afraid of the Bears. The Bears got worse after the trade deadline by trading away defensive players. On the Chicago side, again, I've said it, start Fields. This is a no-brainer at this point this week. You're still going to start guys like David Montgomery. Chicago has told us that they're going to run David Montgomery first. Now, Khalil Herbert has been getting more run, and this could be a spot to start him. And this is a really good spot to both start Darnell Mooney, Chase Claypool, and then also Cole Kmet. Just remember, 2 touchdowns, don't chase points, but this is still a good spot. Kmet may not get there. If you're streamed and you're still streaming, is a guy to stream. Don't just take a guy that's produced for you and say, well, I can't play him now. I have to play Kmet because now he's hitting. Okay, maybe not. One note for Detroit is they are bottom 5 when it comes to wide receivers for fantasy football. So this is a really good spot for both Mooney and Claypool. Now watch, they'll get Wally pipped by some other guy for the backfield. It'll be the Equanimeous St. Brown game. So it'll be St. Brown versus St. Brown. Just watch that happen. But I would still start Claypool and Mooney. Don't start chasing ancillary pieces on Chicago's side. The next game is the Broncos against the Titans. Titans are a 3-point favorite. This is an ugly game at 37.5 for Vegas total. So I believe it is the lowest total game of the week. So on the Broncos side, honestly, there's really no one to start with confidence in this game, at least in my opinion. On paper, yes, the Titans do are not good. They look like they're really bad against the pass. So wide receivers could do well against them. So if you're looking just on paper, if you're looking at the whatever app you use, Sleeper, ESPN, Yahoo, it highlights green for Jerry Jeudy, for Courtland Sutton, because, well, Titans are bad. Well, and yes, we also remember Juju Smith-Schuster had a really good game last week against the Titans. But Denver is not a Patrick Mahomes-led offense. Denver is not Kansas City. Tennessee's a really good defense. They know how to generate pressure. When Denver's faced teams that generate lots of pressure, their offense has suffered. It did it when they faced Indianapolis. Okay? They've done it when they faced tough opponents. So just remember that. This appears that could be a really low-scoring game with low totals on both sides of the ball. If you really want to start somebody, yes, you could. I would say start Jerry Jeudy. I'm actually doing this in a league where I'm sitting Courtland Sutton this week because I really don't like the matchup, and I'm starting a guy that's projected for less points because the process says this is the guy that actually has a chance to have a better game. It's a gamble. This is why we don't just say, oh, well, he has a really good matchup. Does he, though? So really, I'm not starting any Denver players with confidence here. I understand this looks like it could be a good spot, but I don't like it as much. On Tennessee's side, again, I'm not starting anybody with Derrick Henry with really much confidence. Derrick Henry is the guy that he can get that workload share for the backfield, and he'll get you there. He'll wear a defense down by the fourth quarter, but he's kind of a special breed to be able to do that. This is also a very good Denver defense. So I'm not starting with confidence. And part of that is because it's Tennessee, whether it's Tannehill, Malik Willis, I don't know what the game plan is going to be other than we use Henry. So I can't start anybody with confidence. If you're in a pinch, I mean, Robert Woods is the guy there. Treylon Burks should be coming back soon. But this is a tough spot. So start both defenses, I guess. If you really want to. On to the next game. This is a lot more fun game to talk about. It's the Jaguars and the Chiefs. And this is the highest game total at 50.5. And the Chiefs have a 9.5 point favorite this week against the Jags. On the Jags side, you can stream Lawrence. He's not a bad option. I understand Malik Willis didn't have a good week last week, but Trevor Lawrence is not Malik Willis. Just remember that. We'll see if the second half of Kansas City's defense from last week is actually the real deal, or is it going to be a little more friendly like it has been all season long? So just remember that. I'm still starting Lawrence if I need him, especially in 2QB. This is a good spot. I'll still start Kirk. You're obviously starting Travis Etienne. If you're thinking, well, I need to pivot off of him, no, don't do that. That's a bad thing at this point. On a flyer, I will start Zay Jones too. Zay Jones still has a production that matches Christian Kirk for the Jaguars. So especially if I need somebody that may be low roster that's on the waiver wire, I need somebody to pick up. Maybe I need to be able to pivot. Zay Jones is not a bad option. And you're streaming Evan Ingram on the tight end side. So on Kansas City side, there are no-brainer starts, and this has increased to 1 in my opinion. Mahomes and Kelsey have been the no-brainers for the year. You add Juju Smith-Schuster to that list now, too. Things this year that have been said about Kansas City is they're not as good as they were last year. They had Hill last year. They're not as good this year. Also, other things that have been said around the NFL, scoring is down. I said that before. Scoring this year is down. We see it. Also, one other thing that we know is being said, Kansas City leads the league in scoring. One of those three statements can't be true. They all don't match up. It's like, when you were little, Sesame Street song, one of these things just doesn't belong here. So one of those statements is false. Either Kansas City is still good and very good at scoring because they lead the league with scoring this year, so they're still good. And they really do miss Hill, and they've not figured out what to do, how to replace him. I believe this team is good. It's good at scoring. It scores well. And yes, there are times that this team struggles to score against certain teams. I do believe, though, that by not having Hill, by having the receivers they do, this makes them better. Football-wise, this makes them better. It's frustrating, yes, for fantasy, but that's the difference. Coaches, GMs are not out here trying to win a fake game, a fake championship, based on the game that they actually play. Kadarius Toney is still a hold, but I would still go back to MVS. He is the air yard leader for Kansas City. This is a better matchup. This is a game he could go out and ball out. Don't just take one game and say, well, I can't play him now. He didn't do much. Well, okay. He's also done it and had success previously. So don't just take one game and say, well, I can't do that. So you could stream MVS. I like him for a flex option if you need this year or this week. On the backfield side, Jerick McKinnon was listed as limited for Friday's practice. If Jerick McKinnon does not go, that elevates both Pacheco and CEH. I think it elevates Pacheco more than CEH. And we get this backfield to be a little bit clearer as being a two-headed race, not a three-headed one. Yes, Ronald Jones would probably be activated, but the lion's share of the work would go to Pacheco and CEH. Hold Pacheco. Don't stop yet. It's a rough spot, but especially if McKinnon does not go, I think that elevates, and this could be that boom game for Isaiah Pacheco. That's the guy you really want to have starting for you on your team if you need one. I would still start him if McKinnon's out or in, but it's a lot better spot if he's out. It's rough if he's in because it's three-way splits versus two-way. On to the next game. It is the Browns and the Dolphins. This is the second highest scoring total game, where the third was the Lions and Bears. The Dolphins are a 3.5-point favorite, and the game is set at 49. On the Browns side, Miami is very fantasy football friendly when it comes to the opposing teams. You're starting Chubb. You're still, in this spot, I would say you could start Hunt. He's an RB2 this week. You start Amari Cooper. You could stream Jacoby Brissett, though. This could be his biggest performance this year. I think the highest total for his passing yards is like 278 or something like that. He could surpass that this week. There's opportunity. The guy to stream is Donovan Peoples-Jones. I've been talking about Donovan Peoples-Jones for weeks now. His target share, his route participation have been going up. He is very efficient with his with the routes that he does have, with the targets he gets. He also is the big guy downfield that you're going to throw the ball to. This is the week for Donovan Peoples-Jones. Now, you can start tight ends against Miami. So David Njoku is out. Harrison Bryant would be the guy to step in. You can stream Harrison Bryant. He could be your punt play if you need somebody desperately at tight end. On the flip side for the Dolphins, this really is no-brainer. You start Tua, Hill, and Waddle. It really doesn't matter who the opponent is as far as defense goes. Where this becomes interesting is you can run against the Browns. Now, Cleveland has been getting better defensively, so we'll see if that trend continues. So this is where, on paper, because of averages, may not fully match up what might happen because we're slow to see change. The running game may be affected a little bit more for Miami. Just be ready for that. Mostert is still the backfield leader, but Jeff Wilson is taking over more of that share. He is more of a threat to Mostert than Chase Edmonds was. So just remember that. It's still start Mostert, but you could stream Wilson if you needed to. On to the Texans and the Giants. This game is a 40.5 point over under, or for a game total, I should say. The Giants are a 4.5 point favorite. On the Texans side, honestly, really, the only person I start with confidence is Dameon Pierce. Goes back to the comment I made about Kenneth Walker. Talent plus opportunity. Dameon Pierce has the talent. He has the opportunity, and he's held the opportunity. When teams faced, or when the Texans faced Philadelphia last week, Philadelphia is a pretty good run defense. They average less than 100 yards a game to the running back. The Giants give up over 100 yards on average to the game for running backs. So the Giants look worse, but the Giants give up fewer touchdowns to the running back than the Eagles did. Last week, Pierce had over 100 yards. He could still see his points. He's still that RB2 for this week, even though it's a bad week as far as matchup-wise goes. I don't really care to stream Mills, but you could. The Giants do have a good defense. They're kind of almost just slightly above average against quarterbacks. And on the wide receiver side, I really don't trust anybody because is Brandon Cooks going to play, or is this fake wrist injury actually going to be limiting him? I don't know. Nico Collins, if he's hurt, I mean, the guy to take a flyer on is probably Philip Dorsett, but you don't feel confident about it. There are other guys I would take flyers on, like Donovan Peoples-Jones. He's probably out there in more leagues, or in most leagues that go get him, stream him. Zay Jones, a lot better opportunity, a lot better spot. Okay. Really not a whole lot of people other than Pierce on the Texans that I'm starting. On the Giants side, this should be a Saquon Barkley week. The Texans are awful against running backs. We saw it last week with Miles Sanders. Saquon Barkley could get over 200 yards this week. He could do what Derrick Henry did. He has that potential. Now, again, we don't assume what game script is. I'm just saying that is in the realm of possibilities for him. Daniel Jones, also because the Texans are so bad against the run, Daniel Jones could have a really good week. You can stream Daniel Jones. The one wide receiver I would put out there is Wan'Dale Robinson. I'm not necessarily chasing Darius Slayton. I would still put up Wan'Dale Robinson. His workload, his usage has been elevating. This guy is going to be good down the stretch for you. Next up is the Saints and the Steelers. This is a 40-point game total, and the Saints are a 1.5 favorite on this. Now, this is going to be an odd game where on the Saints side, you stream Andy Dalton. This is a good spot. Still, Pittsburgh is not a good defense, but you stream Andy Dalton. The one wide receiver I like is Chris Olave. I think he leads the league, or is top 5 in the league in air yards and for his team. So Chris Olave is that guy. He's the alpha. Michael Thomas is out all year, so we don't have to worry about do we play him or not. Jarvis Landry may be back, but I'm not excited about it. And it's Juwan Johnson for tight end if you need a stream. If you have Taysom Hill, put him in your tight end. Don't worry about it. He'll get you 3 points. He's going to get you 30 points. He'll get you somewhere in the middle there. He's the guy for a tight end that he breaks the tight end position. This is why tight end is a wasteland in fantasy football. Unless you have Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews, you're really kind of worried about what do I do. This is why you stream half the league of tight ends. So if you have Taysom Hill, put him in. He has the opportunity to get you the rushing, receiving, and passing. No other tight end has that opportunity. You're, of course, playing Kamara, but those are the only guys on the Saints I'm looking at. On the Steelers side, the Saints aren't bad. They're not great. They're kind of league average against position. So you could play Kenny Pickett. You were probably out there being not very nauseous as you're playing Deontay Johnson and Najee Harris if you need to. You also play George Pickens, and you can stream Pat Freiermuth. That's kind of all. So just remember, it looks ugly. Kind of is, but this is a game that, because we don't predict game script, this is a game that could hit over on the Vegas totals. So if that really does happen, that means that elevates all the playmakers for both teams because they have the ability to. So just remember that. Colts and Raiders. This is going to be an interesting game. This is a game total at 41. The Raiders are a 4.5-point favorite. On the Colts side, Frank Reich was fired. They brought in Jeff Saturday. We don't know what this team is going to look like from a play calling perspective. We don't know what this team is going to be. Jonathan Taylor's questionable. Is he going to play? Is he not? If he doesn't play, you're starting up Deion Jackson if he's healthy. I would start up Deion Jackson. You have seen a full game from Deion Jackson. He has commanded over 10 targets and a workload out of that backfield for the rushing share. He is a guy to start. He is that replacement. I know Zach Moss is there too, but I would start Deion Jackson if Jonathan Taylor's not there. Now, this is also an interesting spot. The Raiders are a very bad team. They're one of the worst when it comes to quarterback play. So Sam Ehlinger, this could be his spot to go out and have a decent game. That also means you're playing Michael Pittman. I don't like chasing Alec Pierce or chasing Paris Campbell. I understand if you do it. I don't like it because Sam Ehlinger's not a good quarterback. I'll just say it. He's not a good quarterback with NFL terms. So I don't like chasing the ancillary pieces on offenses that are bad, even when the matchup says, yes, do it. I like Michael Pittman. But again, we don't know what this team's going to look like. So if you don't feel comfortable with anything, don't play him. I'm starting Michael Pittman in one league, and I'm kind of holding my nose up a little bit at it, like, this kind of looks gross, but maybe. We'll see. The Raiders, on the other hand, I think have the more pressure against them. If they lose to the Colts, a brand new head coach with Jeff Saturday, a team that's in disarray, and they go to 1-7, 1-8, and not have 2 wins, this could be the end for Josh McDaniels. He might be out. This is a team that had that were in the playoffs last year. They had playoff aspirations again this year. That's not happening. The Colts are actually a decent team against quarterbacks. San Francisco, the Rams, Cincinnati, Dallas, Green Bay, Houston, Buffalo, Philadelphia, and Denver are the only ones that are better on paper for fantasy football. It's not automatic start for Derek Carr. Just remember that. That could lower Devontae Adams' ceiling. Yeah, he boomed last week. He had a really good game. He's Devontae Adams. He should. That's probably not going to happen this week. It's probably more of a Josh Jacobs week. You can run against Indianapolis. Against the running back, Indy is in. They're in the bottom half of the average against the running back. So, if you have better options, again, Carr is similar position to what Cousins is in. You're probably going to start him because, hey, this is what could happen. Like, he's gotten you there. You're starting Adams. Waller's on IR, so you could stream Foster Moreau. I'm only starting Adams with somewhat confidence, but then I'm also then starting Jacobs. I think this could be more of a Jacobs week, not an Adams Carr week against Indianapolis. On to the Cowboys and Packers. This game is a 44-point total with the Cowboys as a 4.5-point favorite. This is the Mike McCarthy versus Aaron Rodgers game. Who is the better of the two? Both Green Bay and Dallas are good against the quarterback. So on Dallas side, you are starting Dak, yes, but just remember, Green Bay is good against the quarterback. You're going to start CeeDee Lamb, and that's about all. If you're taking a flyer on Michael Gallup, I would maybe look at one of those better matchups with ancillary pieces. My opinion, but I prefer like Donovan Peoples-Jones to Michael Gallup. I prefer Zay Jones even to Michael Gallup as well. This is going to be a tough matchup for Dallas. Green Bay has a good defense. In the news, Jerry Jones came out and said this team still runs through Zeke. That's part of the problem for Dallas. The other part of the problem fantasy football-wise is Dallas has a good defense. That lowers the ceiling for their offense sometimes. So if you have Zeke, you probably are starting him. If you have Pollard, you kind of hope Zeke doesn't play, but this is still a spot that he might be a flex option if you need, because Pollard is that good. He is better than Zeke this year. He has been better than Zeke. We all see that. We just hope Dallas can see that before the end of the season, too. On to Green Bay side. I mean, if you still have Rodgers, ew. Can I not play him? Can I go maybe find somebody on the waiver wire? There's probably better options, but I mean, yeah, he's Aaron Rodgers. Allen Lazard looks to be able to play, but it's Lazard, then maybe Christian Watson, Shi Smith, I think, or he might be with the Panthers, but there is one more that's potential. But again, these are backups. It doesn't look good. Aaron Jones got hurt last week. He's a question mark. The guy I would really look at, not A.J. Dillon, Kylan Hill. If he's activated, that's the guy to go stash. If Aaron Jones misses time, and remember, there have been other guys this year that have been out with an ankle injury that, he should be fine this week, and they missed several games. So, Kylan Hill, go pick him up now. If Aaron Jones misses, he might actually be the better back than A.J. Dillon, and he would be the guy. He's that on the margin piece. Go get Kylan Hill before your league mates know about him. Cardinals and Rams, it's a 40.5 game total, and the Rams are actually a 1.5 favorite. On the Cardinals side, be aware that Kyler Murray might miss this game. Be ready. Have a backup plan. If he misses, you still play Hopkins. You could still play Rondale Moore. This is kind of the Josh Allen piece all over again. If he plays, it elevates the offense. If he doesn't play, it lowers everybody in the offense. Just be aware of that. But it's Hopkins, Rondale Moore. You play Zach Ertz. You can play Zach Ertz against the Rams. On the running back side, I kind of don't like anybody. Yes, if Connor plays, great, but he has been banged up. If he gets hurt again, Benjamin's been stepping up, but if Connor plays, that lowers Benjamin. So I'm kind of holding off on the running back side if I can help it. On the Rams side, this is a dumpster fire. You're playing Cooper Kupp. You play Higbee because you can play any tight end against the Cardinals and you're good. But that's really about all. Similar to what Green Bay has, if Henderson's out, if Henderson's hurt, Kyren Williams. It's Kyren Williams for the Rams. Go look at this piece. Go look at him. Because if Akers really is done and they really don't like him, Kyren Williams could be activated. I think I saw something that he might be activated. So go get Kyren Williams for the Rams as the potential lead back here in the next few weeks. Chargers and 49ers. This is a 45.5 point game total, and the Niners are a touchdown favorite in this game. Both teams are coming off the bye. The Niners just got demolished in their bye week by, one of the last pieces we remember is they just got demolished by the Chiefs. And the thing we know about the Chargers, they're all not healthy. Again, you're probably still rolling out Justin Herbert. I have him in several leagues, and it's rough. I get it. He's not been that bad as far as what he's done. He is producing, I think, about 4 points less than he did last year per game. Again, this is why per games you have to understand how does that look. He's not pushing it down the field as much. Mike Williams is still out. Be aware if Keenan Allen plays. We don't know if he plays. You're probably playing him. There's not really a better option, but just be aware of that. I play Josh Palmer. I played DeAndre Carter. Gerald Everett, you play him. You're playing Austin Eckler. If Eckler goes down, it's Isaiah Spiller and it's Sony Michel. I like Isaiah Spiller better than Sony Michel. On the Niners side, this is kind of straightforward. You can stream Garoppolo. The Chargers are not a good defense, not like we thought they were going to be. You can play Christian McCaffrey, obviously. You're playing Deebo Samuel. I would still play Brandon Ayuk. And, of course, you're playing George Kittle. That's about it. Last game for the Monday night game is the Commanders at the Eagles. It's a 44-point game total with the Eagles as an 11-point favorite. If you're a betting person, the unders and the underdogs have hit more often, meaning go with Commanders. Can they keep it within 10? You hit, if they hit that, you win. I'm not really that much of a betting person, but I look at trends, I see trends. So that's just an interesting trend to go look at. On the Commander side, it's Philadelphia. You're probably only playing Terry McLaurin. I also maybe like Antonio Gibson here. But again, the backfield is a mess where Antonio Gibson is the best running back out of that backfield. It's kind of like the Dallas situation where the Commanders want Brian Robinson to be a thing. They want J.D. McKissick, which he's been hurt, but they want J.D. McKissick to get some run too. Antonio Gibson should be that lead back. He's been getting it. His production's been increasing as well as what he's been able to do since Brian Robinson came in and muddled that backfield more. So hold Antonio Gibson. You could probably play him. It's probably a flex spot for him. I don't really care to play Taylor Heineke if I can avoid it. I'm only playing McLaurin as I guess maybe if I have to, but it's really ugly. On Philadelphia side, it's really straightforward. You're obviously starting Hurts. You're obviously starting A.J. Brown. You're starting Devontae Smith. You're starting Miles Sanders. And you're starting Dallas Goedert. 5 pieces on this team that you can start fantasy football-wise. Do we know who's going to go off? No. Those are the guys that get production, though. So that's it for Week 10 prep. If you have questions, if you have comments, you have start-sit questions, you want to post them, put them in the chat. I will get to those as soon as I can. I'll monitor my page here prior to kickoff. So like and subscribe, again, like I said. And for us here at the Vampire Fantasy Football Forum, may your teams have best of luck this week. May your luck for fantasy be better than your opponent's luck. We'll see you next time.